This is the Reluctant Leader podcast, brought to you by the Reluctant Leader Academy. I'm your host, Mark Terrell, and in each episode I will invite an expert guest to discuss a topic or subject that will enhance your knowledge and hopefully inspire you on your leadership journey. If managing people is becoming your biggest headache, then check out the How to Lead Your Team with Confidence course and join the next group program starting soon. So let's see who's in the hot seat today. Today I'm talking to Darren Clark. Darren is a serial entrepreneur based in Wiltshire in the UK, who is an accomplished international speaker and has spoken to thousands of people all over the globe, inspiring them with his incredible life story. Darren's journey of undiagnosed dyslexia until the age of 37 meant that he had to work even harder within his career and business. Due to this, he fought constant stress and bouts of depression, but determination and perseverance continued to drive him forward and to make a difference to other sufferers from dyslexia all over the world. I hope you enjoy this chat we had about dyslexia, and I'll catch you all on the other side. Darren, welcome to the Reluctant Leader podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Mark. Really appreciate it.
I was reflecting on, as I do with when I met people on their journeys, and we met at local networking a long time ago, and we were on a certain point in our path, yes. And obviously lots have changed in that time, and we've probably we connect on social media, and we sort of track people and see what they're doing. And it's been really interesting to see how you've evolved from what you were doing to what you're doing now, but I won't spoil anything at this point. So before we get stuck into that, the question I always ask my guests is, why do you do what you do? And what was that pivotal moment that took you down this path?
So the pivotal moment, it's almost kind of been two things really. The pivotal moment of leaving the corporate sector, almost 11 years now, goodness, was kind of, I've always been career driven, or I've always been in a situation where I kind of want to get to the next level. I want to be, either a manager, whatever it is, or run a company. And I think it was just a case of, I always liked starting at the bottom of things. So if it was working in retail, I was pushing trolleys and then managed to get all the way up to kind of regional manager. And the pivotal moment for me was because I've been, it's normally to a point when I get to the kind of the top of where I can go, and there's no more learning in that sector, or there's no more things I can do. I then move on to something else. So the pivotal moment for me was really, because I've done so much work in the corporate industry of growing my own career and my skill base, it was to see if I could then set up my own business, and which I did. And within that 10, 11 year journey, there was quite a few different pivotal moments, especially which the topic which we're going to cover shortly on the dyslexia side of it, which is giving me that, I feel, that kind of real drive to put me where I am today. But I'd say the pivotal moment is all about learning for me. It's all about pushing myself and experiences. Right, yeah.
That's really interesting. And as you've mentioned, we're going to be talking about an interesting topic here that I think it affects more people than we realise. And I was only mentioning this to my partner yesterday, and she said, and she mentioned that her daughter suffers mildly with dyslexia, and she has certain things that she needs to do to make sure that she can cope with exams and all those sort of things that we take for granted. So just to start the sort of topic or the chat around dyslexia, just tell us some of the challenges that you've had in your life up to this day, and also when did you find out you're actually dyslexic?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I kind of found out I was diagnosed with dyslexia at the age of 36. So I'm 44 now. I always forget. So that was kind of the diagnosis of a late diagnosis was great in one way, because it was kind of it allowed me to kind of forgive myself, I guess, for all the things when I felt I was dumb, stupid, all the labels that they tend to give people, or the feelings that you feel inside. So dyslexia is has affected me, throughout my whole life. But there's been key areas where I felt it's been more troublesome than it's worth, because of when the challenges. So take school, for instance. Primary school wasn't too much of an issue. I really enjoyed primary school. Probably the later side of it, when you start to do, kind of more little exams to go into the secondary school. That was quite difficult. But generally, growing up, nursery, primary school wasn't too much of a problem. But it was when I went into the secondary school, and then you're put more, in special classes. You're put in different sets, and that was really quite challenging, because I look back on it now, and I think for those 5 years I was being challenged with something that I thought I would go home every night with a headache and migraines, and thinking, why don't I get it? I just don't get it. The information that they're sending into my brain, I can't remember it. The letters are moving around. I'm just and the difficulty is, and this is why when we work with schools and education and in corporates as well, we try and it's very hard to help someone and give them the tools that they need to do their job when the person themselves don't really know what the problem is. And that's kind of how I felt. I would always try and do so many different things because I couldn't do stuff. I couldn't read properly off the book, or I couldn't go up to the classroom and write on the board, or do simple exams and these things as well. So these things are really, really challenging for me. But looking back on it, people's asked before, do you blame the educational side of it? Because I left school with not a single qualification, and most of the time my school days were in this thing called the unit, which is not a special police force. It's an actual cabin, which is like a porter's cabin in the middle of the school field, and given things like colouring in to do and just activities really. And I look back and I think, was I robbed of my education? And in one aspect, you could probably say, yes, there was that element of the teacher didn't really know. But secondly, I guess I didn't really know what the issues were at that time. Now, thankfully, with the educational system, there's still masses of work to be done. But we can definitely see a turn and a change in the amazing things that teachers are doing. The school I grew up in, the area I grew up in, the school I grew up in, a school I went to was quite, kind of like a school of hard knocks, really. And I don't think dyslexia was, around in people's mindset around that time. So I've always struggled with it. I struggle with it every day now. Certain things like if I get tired, words start moving around. I find it difficult to concentrate most of the times. You're very fidgety. And the other thing as well, Mark, they say that it's statistically not many people, a lot of people that have dyslexia, there are also elements of other things. So it could be dyspraxia, it could be ADHD as well. So there's so many different elements to this. And I think that's why it's very difficult to really kind of analyze and help someone fully until that person really knows what they actually need to help them with.
Mm. So yes, I suppose with everything, there's different how much these things affect different people in different ways and in different intensities, I suppose.
Yeah,
I suppose you can have mild dyslexia and maybe and the opposite to that, where it's really sort of affecting you sort of day to day.
And I was really shocked when someone said, not one person's dyslexia is the same as another person. There's a slight deviation of it all, and that's that's massive. They say 1 in 10 people or 1 in 5 people statistically, are dyslexic, and it's a huge number of people that have. Like I said, either mild dyslexia or, strong dyslexia in the sense of that it debilitates them from doing daily things that we take for granted.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, probably people thinking, listen to this, probably think, well, how do I find out whether I am dyslexic if they've got some sort of inkling? Is there something, I guess you can get tested, can you? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's different degrees of testing. Now, people think the testing side of it is very much it's what you want to get tested for, and a lot of the time people think, well, actually, I don't want to get tested because I don't want to have a label, to think, well, I can't do that because I'm dyslexic, or I can't do this. So there are benefits, bonuses, especially for a child in the younger education if they are
able to be tested, then they can contact places like, they can just Google dyslexia testing in their local area. And there are centres that you can actually go to. There's online things as well. And obviously there's the British Dyslexia Association, which you can Google, and then they would have a whole ream of different things that can help you with. But it's down to, I definitely urge, if people wanted to get tested, it's just, the whole point for me to get tested was just to understand it more. And I think once I understood dyslexia and the help and support that you can get with it, I think it just makes things, it doesn't cure it. You can never cure dyslexia, but you can definitely make it a little bit easier for yourself.
Yeah. And I think the important thing here is that, and this is one of the reasons why I enjoy doing these podcasts, because it's not just about interviewing interesting people that have had, got a great story. It's about, I actually learn something because I have to do a little bit of investigation into the topics, because obviously I'm not an expert in a lot of this stuff. And it's surprising what you find out. And I did some, as you do, Google this, that, and the other. And one of the things that sprung up was that there's a large percentage of entrepreneurs are dyslexic, and the people that such as Einstein and Richard Branson and Steve Jobs, they're quite famous people that have obviously been very, very successful, and so they've somehow used something that maybe people see as a disability in some way, but actually they're using it as a superpower in some way. So can you sort of relate to how that sort of works?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and like you said, that, you alluded to the names that are, very, very successful dyslexic people, even pop singers like Usher and Lewis Hamilton are dyslexic, and then the list is endless. And some people say, with dyslexia, why do you do things differently? And I think it just comes down to the fact that, for me personally, I know no other way. So, it's not like I was given, dyslexia at the age of 10 and said, so I never really had any ways of dealing with this before. So I guess with the superpower side of it, I know that gets mentioned quite a lot. And I don't know, for me personally, it's that creativity, that drive, that hunger to think differently all the time about the most simplest of things. I'll give you an example. When I was going for a promotion when I was in the corporate sector and I was going for a promotion, I think this was for store manager and I think it was kind of an extra pay rise of say £25,000, which is huge sums of money. And I had to go for a 2-day presentation. I had to drive all the way up to Birmingham. I had to go into a room with 9 other candidates, and we were all being interviewed, and we'd have to do a PowerPoint presentation for 20 minutes to the people that were, I think it was one of the head of HR and one of the regional managers. And what we had to do is we had to go down and do the presentation in front of the other 9 candidates and in front of them. And that was quite tough. So the remit was do the presentation, tell us why you should get this role. And I always remember I was lucky number 10, I think. So I was the last one to do the presentation. And what actually happened is I had to go walk down. It's like walking, it was the walk down was really terrifying. And then they said, set up the presentation, start doing things, start telling us why you should be getting the position. And instead of doing the PowerPoint presentation, I'd actually had a flip chart with drawings on it. So, kind of like we're talking about delivery turnaround. And so I had a truck outside of a store. We're talking about the graduation program that they've got. So I had someone wearing a graduation hat. So see, the wet thing for me, I see everything in pictures. So once I see that picture, I can log in what information that needs to go with it. But this is where it changes, and you have to have quite a bit of confidence to do it. Is when I started showing the flip chart, the people in front of me seemed a little bit annoyed because what they thought I was doing was taking the mick. Why am I not taking this position very seriously? And the other 9 candidates that were up there were kind of laughing because they thought this guy's a bit of a joker. 3 pages in, when I can start relaying the information, they started getting it. They started thinking, well, actually, yeah, you're giving what the information is. at the end of it, the gentleman came up and shook my hand and said, well done for having the nerve to do something so outrageous. And, at that point I could have just said, yeah, that's just me. But what I did, I said, well, I thought to myself, I know no different. If I would have learned at that time how to do the PowerPoint presentation and try and get all the information in that short period of time to do it, then it would have, overloaded my brain and thought to myself, well, actually, I can't do that. So what can I do? So I think when it comes down to superpowers, I think it just comes down to trying to think, what's the end goal? What is it we want to achieve here? And how do we get around it? And I think that creativity side, you take Richard Branson, for instance, it's that attitude, I guess, of surrounding himself with amazing people, but also having the tenacity to just say, do you know what, let's just give it a go. What's the worst that can happen?
And I guess it comes back to the way you see the world, isn't it? Like everything, we all see the world differently. And
yes.
If that information is going into our brain differently, then we're obviously, the output is bound to be different, isn't it? And, I'm sort of thinking about how I would have coped in that situation, not, wanting to really get involved with the technology. And something I wrote down here actually was that dyslexics tend to think in images and feelings and not sounds and words. Is that something that resonates with you?
Absolutely. I will always tend to remember what if I met someone at networking, I'd always remember either, what shirt they were wearing or, something about them, as opposed to names and other details within that side of it. And again, but so imagery is absolutely key, especially for me. I will always remember something and relate it to an image, to kind of recall it, I guess. And I think that what you mentioned as well, Mark, is that we all see the world differently. The way with dyslexia is that when we're reading something, we're all taking it in the same. So we see it the same, we read it the same, but when it actually goes in and starts decoding, that's when the problems arise. That's when the output of what it is that we're trying to decode, that's when the issues start happening. And that's where the problems lie.
Yeah, and the interesting thing was that if someone said about this before I did my bit of research, I would have definitely thought about reading and writing as things that were challenging. But it's this sound thing that came out of it, which was quite interesting. Thinking, well, I never thought that sounds were something that that you have trouble with. But when you think about it, when speaking, it's very much about sounds, isn't it? And it's actually decoding that sound into a word. And I suppose that's where that sound thing comes in.
Absolutely. And because dyslexia is linked to, like I said, dyspraxia and ADHD and dyscalculia, and there's other elements that it can be. And I'm not saying you could have mild forms of these, and that's why you would really, if you had a full test, so to speak, then they could break it right down for you. But with because I'm dyslexic and have slight ADHD tendencies, so it's difficult to try and analyze which is the ADHD side of it, which is the dyslexia side of it. But noise for me could be crippling. So when say if I'm at a conference or an expo or a networking event, then because I'm trying to decode and take in so much, I need to go away somewhere, and I carry headphones with me all the time, and I tend to put classical music on. So I need to kind of find some quiet time afterwards for 10 minutes to just kind of, my brain just feels absolutely frazzled after it because you're just so exhausted. So I'll tend to just listen to something soothing like classical music. And again, this is just me. This is how I deal with it and how I cope with it. And then that brings me back to kind of a level of where I can then, go again, so to speak. But noise, decoding noise, hearing too much noise. And the other thing as well is the superpower side of it. It sounds a bit strange, but I could be in a cafe and I can hear about 4 or 5 different conversations going on at once. So I'm honing in on absolutely everything. And sometimes, if your brain's working continuously like that, and the sounds of it, it can be quite exhausting. So, but again, I can from my own experiences.
Yeah, yeah. And so another thing I've also picked up was about long-term memory. Is it tends to be that you have quite a good long-term memory, and so
Yes,
you're
it
able to sort of remember them. And I guess that you remember those things in the images and feelings. I suppose that's another thing. And is that something that you use to your advantage?
Yeah, definitely. And I think storytelling and helps. So I will always remind myself of a picture, the story that goes with it. And then within that, there's some facts. So that's how I tend to remember everything. Short-term memory is terrible. I give you an example. If you ask for to reset something or a code, you do something on the computer and a code comes through on your phone to say, put in 3496 or whatever it is. If I have to swipe off of the phone to go back in to try and put the code in, it would take me forever. Absolutely. So I need to go back in, so short-term memory is for me is really, really difficult. I don't know if that's linked to the dyslexia, the ADHD. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it's something that I've always had. The short-term it was almost like I just instantly forget. It's a bit like when you meet someone and they tell you your name. It's almost like you've trained your brain to just go, actually, I'm not going to take that in. That's I won't take that in. But yeah, so there's quite a lot of things that you're battling with on a daily basis.
Yeah, it seems like it's a struggle, but obviously, from what I found out is that there are a lot of people that have made a lot of money out of it. Apparently, 40% of all self-made millionaires have dyslexia in some form or another, and also particular areas of business, entrepreneurial. People tend to be, it's almost like it's seen as a benefit. I'm sure you don't see it that way, but it's obviously something that helps in these certain sectors. Architects, engineering, arts, those sort of areas seem to be where dyslexia has some sort of ability to improve and help them in that scenario. Any idea of why that might be?
I'd say, the creativity industry is, entrepreneurial, the business, the creativity side of it, music, even down to sports as well. I would just say I don't know if it's that sheer drive or the fact that you think to yourself, well, actually, for me, I've always been kind of the underdog and written off in so many ways. So at the start, it was down to, not you want to prove them wrong, but because you're always trying to focus on the most simplest of things and you find those difficult, you tend to turn to something that you find enjoyable or you can actually do. And a lot of the times, if you look at, say, some of the sports stars that are out there that are dyslexic, they would tend to just focus their times on that. Business, they would focus their times on this. And I think it's just down to that sheer drive, that sheer enjoyment that people get out of doing something. But the other thing as well, I've noticed with all the dyslexics that I've met, I've traveled to many different countries now with our global dyslexia group, and people with dyslexia are incredibly great communicators. And what they tend to do is they tend to have, they surround themselves with amazing people. And I know I alluded to Richard Branson earlier about, getting himself with amazing people. And that's exactly what he's done. We tend to find things, and again, within business, you tend to find things that you're good at. And then people who are better at doing other things, you then surround yourself so they can help and support your mission going forward. And again, I know a lot of people do that in business, but I've noticed that with dyslexia, is that the communication side of it and the relationship building it's been intense. It's been great to see.
Yeah, it's really interesting, fascinating, and I think it's about time we sort of moved on to what your vision is, because you've obviously got a passion around this. You want to you have a message that you want to globally want to get the message out there with. So just tell us about that, your business now going forward, and what that's all about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like I said, when I found out I was diagnosed at 36, I then started doing school talks prior to that. And it was mainly school talks around business, entrepreneurship. And then it kind of switched around to going into schools, from primary schools to secondary schools, universities, youth projects, and so on. And I think I've spoken to probably about 70, 80,000 students over the period of time. And it was around kind of dyslexia, and it was around changing the perspective of people with dyslexia, helping that inclusivity in schools. Then it changed. I was very fortunate to do lots of kind of talks at business shows, again, bringing the subject of dyslexia. Not many people were aware of this, so I was able to do that. And then over the past, I'd say, a year and a half now, nearly 2 years, we went on a kind of a bit of a campaign. So we put an email campaign together probably about a year and a half ago, and it was literally contacting 76 different organizations to do with dyslexia. So these were registered schools that were to do with dyslexia across the globe. And it kind of took me on a bit of a 12-month whirlwind tour, really. So a lady called Phyllis and her sister Nancy came back from Kenya and emailed me back and said I'd like to go out to their school. So I went literally, and again, I don't know if this is entrepreneurial or dyslexic, but within a week of getting that email, I booked a ticket and was flying out to Kenya, and we put on an event for the local village, which was fantastic. And then I recently became a board member of their school. So we're then on the back of that, we went to Malawi. We went to America for the International Dyslexia Global Conference, which I was speaking at. What we've been doing now over the past year and a half is really just trying to build connections for people. And now what we've done now is been able to take it into organizations. So we've recently, we're working with HSBC and their 40,000 staff to, again, that inclusivity thing. So our aim with the Global Dyslexia Group is really to kind of change the perspective of SPLDs, so special learning differences, and make it much more an inclusive workplace and educational sector as well on a global scale. So this year we were meant to be going to 7 different countries to film a documentary on decoding dyslexia, but obviously with the situation, the COVID situation, that was cancelled. But as soon as we're allowed to go, we will push that button and we will go and go to starting off with 7 different countries, trying to really kind of understand dyslexia in different languages and different cultures as well. So that kind of in a brief nutshell is where we're heading. We've got a big job, and we're really excited about doing it. It
sounds fascinating and awesome, and obviously you are passionate about this, and you want to make a difference, and whatever it is that's driving you forward, obviously there is a great passion there, which is, I'm sure you're going to make a massive difference. So how does it? You talked about Kenya there. Across the world, is dyslexia becoming more, something that is addressed, within education and within the workplace, or is that still not very good, and that's why you're sort of driven to do something about it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's vastly improved, obviously, since I was at school. And you've got amazing organisations like the BDA. You've got amazing organisations like Made by Dyslexia with Kate Griggs, who Kate brings in that element of the celebrity side of it. It's Richard Branson, all the kind of the big stars, so to speak. So it gives children in school to kind of that aspiration to think, well, actually, yes, I may be dyslexic, but I could aspire to be someone like that. I think with when you touched on the culture side of it, that was a real big shock to me, I guess. When I went out to Malawi recently, for instance, dyslexia is really kind of not well known in Malawi, so to speak. So if you were to type in dyslexia Malawi, nothing would come up. But after I did a tour from Blantyre to Lilongwe, we were over there for a week and a half. We did kind of pop-up shops and tours to create more awareness for dyslexia. And that was fantastic. And now the ABLE Foundation is set up by this lady called Jaranji, so if you Google it now, there's a lot of information, and she's doing a fantastic job out in Malawi. But what struck me in Kenya is that it's a culture thing. And if a child has dyslexia in Kenya, it tends to bring shame on the village. and people will kind of do anything they can to not acknowledge that the child has any kind of learning differences. And just briefly, if I can, Phyllis and Nancy, to give you an idea of how powerful the work they're doing in Kenya, they set up a school. They started homeschooling their two children. So Phyllis and Nancy, they're sisters, so they had a child. Both of them had dyslexia, and the school did not want to teach them because of they were falling behind in class. So they decided to homeschool them. Now, this led to other people in the village having the same situation. They were asking Phyllis and Nancy, would you be able to homeschool my child? Because I fear they have dyslexia. And then that then progressed to, they had to move out of their home because people were not happy that children with learning differences were being taught in their village. So they had to move home because it was, this was, you just imagine it. You couldn't write this. It was just crazy. So they had to move. They then set up in a different place, and then they set up a school called the Rare Gem Talent School. They have 198 students now in Kenya, all with kind of SPLDs, which, but without those two people, without that work that they're doing, these children wouldn't have an education. And like I said, I'm a board member of their school, been out there twice now, and they're doing incredible things in a country which, if you mention dyslexia, it tends to bring shame as opposed to that positive side of it.
Gosh, you don't think of it as a stigma, not in sort of in the first world, but I suppose third world countries, they've got other stuff going on, and anything that's seen as a disability is something that they don't want to acknowledge, I suppose. Yes, gosh, quite shocking, and a great story there, and I can see why you want to get over and help them and make a difference. It's awesome work. Sadly, Darren, we're coming towards the end of our half an hour or so chat about it. I've really enjoyed it, and what I always do is ask my guests to sort of sum up what we've been talking about and give us sort of 3 top tips from someone that's been listening to this, how they can think about dyslexia, maybe if they're leading a team, or whether they think that they're not suffering, but whether they think that dyslexia is something that is affecting what they do. What would those 3 top tips be?
I would definitely say to go back into your workplace and just maybe have a chat with the HR side of it, and just see how you help people with dyslexia. Look at your, maybe the recruitment process, maybe look at how colleagues can be helped. And you could actually identify within your team if someone has dyslexia. And sometimes it's just massively helpful if you can acknowledge this. And you've also got to start thinking about, if you're an employer, how are you working towards to make someone, come through your organization? Just think about, we were looking at the banking industry, and they could, you think if your online application form is huge, and you have to fill out loads and loads of forms, it can be very, very difficult. So have a look at your policies, and I would definitely say if you want to get tested, to just find out, I would definitely urge you to look into that. That would be the kind of the thought process around dyslexia in the workplace.
Brilliant. Thank you, Darren, for your time today. I've really enjoyed it. It's been an eye-opener for many reasons for me, and I'm sure for the listeners, that we've got to take these things on board and not take them for granted, and realise that some people don't see them the same as we do, and trying to keep it in that superpower sort of realm rather than a disability, I think. But obviously, it's still there.
Definitely. There's loads of positives there, Mark, definitely.
Yeah. So if you've been listening to this and think, what should I do? I think the first thing you should do is connect with Darren, make sure that you watch his journey. I'll be watching Darren's journey, as he's got a big mission there to not solve a problem, but probably help people with dyslexia. So thank you again. And I really look forward to watching your journey going forward.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed the episode, please take the time to leave a review on your chosen platform and share on social media. Don't forget to check out the Reluctant Leader Academy, where you'll find a free 15 questions every manager should be asking themselves checklist that you can download to keep you on track every day. Leadership is a choice. When you understand the right mindset, Know the process to follow and use key skills to keep things moving forward. You'll be on track to leave a lasting legacy. Until next time, be the best you can be and the inspiration for others to follow.